I would like to call to order the January 14th, 2019 Lake Washington School Board meeting. To begin, I'll entertain a motion to approve the January 14th agenda.
Go ahead.
Okay, so moved.
So I'd like to make propose a modification to our agenda to bring item 8 from the non-consent agenda, the naming of the new school mascot, up to after our host school as presented, as we have a few kids in the audience who might be interested to know the answer.
I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the agenda with the modification of moving the naming of the mascot up to after host school. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, agenda is now approved. Okay, now our next step is we have a couple of recognitions. So Jane, you will start with those.
I would be happy to start with those. And first and foremost tonight is a recognition of our board of directors. And I would like to formally recognize our school board as part of School Board Recognition Month. But I would also like to recognize this board because of the work that you did this summer to hire a new superintendent, because I am the recipient of that work. So we know that that is one of the primary roles of a school board, and that school boards take that very, very seriously, but it is extensive work that has come during your tenure. But throughout our state and really nationwide, there are school districts that are celebrating School Board Recognition Month. In Washington, this is the 24th year of the annual observance initiated by the National School Boards Association. There is a proclamation from Governor Jay Inslee that the Washington State School Directors Association and the Association of Educational Service Districts and the broader education community take time every January to honor board members from Washington's 295 school districts and 9 elected educational service district boards. So this is something happening across the state. There are approximately 1,477 school board members, and these, of course, are local citizens who take time to fill these roles. And you are highly paid in this role, correct? They get paid by doing great things for students and families, and cookies, right? And an occasional meal here and there that is usually while they are working in a meeting. And so we know that it takes a great deal of time to do good board service. In total, Washington school directors govern districts serving 1.1 million students with a combined annual budget of over $15 billion, employing about 120,000 people. So when you think about the impact that a board of directors has on the life of a school district, it is very significant. When you couple that with the fact that it is largely volunteer service, it's pretty amazing when our citizens are willing to step up and commit that amount of time and that amount of care to make sure that we do the right things for kids. So as part of that recognition, this year we are honoring you with 3 different books, one for elementary, one for middle school, and one for high school. In the front of those books, there is a placard that we will put your name on it, and you will choose what schools you would like to donate these books, one for each at those levels. And so we will give those in your honor to one of our lucky libraries at each level in your name. So I would like to thank you, and on behalf of our school district and our students and our staff, thank you for everything that you do to make this the very, very best school district in the world. Let's give them a hand. You're welcome. That's not all. We have more. Yes. We also need to acknowledge that this is National School Counseling Week, and there is a proclamation that we will have read by our board of directors in just a moment. But I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the school counselors in our district. They do tremendous work proactively to help teach students positive skills of all kinds. They help them be organized. They help them understand who they are as people. They help them get along with other students and peers, and they are very, very busy people. We know that school counseling has become increasingly important to our schools as we look at some of the national trends of student mental health and some of the significant needs that we have to make sure that our kids are healthy, both mentally and physically. And we know that they work on a variety of things that are even different from level to level. High school counselors are working on all of the things I just mentioned, plus career choices and knowing where students want to go after school. And at the middle and elementary levels, helping teach and working with staff and working with parents. And so it's just an amazing role that we have here in our district, and we're happy that we have been able to add counselors over time because we know that they are important to the lives of our students. So with that, I would ask you to read the proclamation, and then we have one more recognition after that.
So Director Carlson, if you could do that for us. Thank you.
And I just want to thank you, Dr. Staven, for stealing all of the good words I was
You're
planning to
welcome.
say. I really do want, I usually am notorious for dodging proclamations, but this is an important one from the school counselors who help your PTAs direct resources to the children who are needy in your local community, to the school counselors who are now our first line of recognition, first line of dealing with students with mental health issues, helping recognize those students and helping them to get the help they need. This is an incredibly important group of people. So, with that, if you're going to proclaim something, I've been advocating for scrolls, but one should proclaim it, yes? So, I wish I could roll my R's because it'd be much more amazing. Whereas Lake Washington School District's 86 school counselors help students reach their full potential, and whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to career awareness and development, and whereas school counselors help parents focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children, and whereas school counselors work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves, and whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society, and whereas comprehensive developmental school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in school, therefore, the Board of Directors do hereby proclaim February 4th through 8th, 2019 as National School Counseling Week. Thank you.
I don't know
For
that I've
those
ever
parents
heard a
and-
resolution
for those
quite
parents
like
out there
that
that
one.
need someone to read to their child at night, Dr. Carlson's available at a limited fee.
Moving right along to the next proclamation, because we also need to recognize that it is Career and Technical Education Month. And again, we know the importance career and technical education plays in helping students look at their future. And it gives students a chance to try out different courses and different areas of interest and aptitude, and helps them shape really what they want to do for the rest of their lives. We have a lot of unique opportunities here in our districts for some fabulous programs where students really get a taste of what the real world feels like. Firefighting, EMTs, dental hygienics, all kinds of different opportunities through WANIC and our high schools with courses that students are able to take in the programs that they have here in Lake Washington. So with that, I have no idea who has to follow Dr. Carlson in reading that resolution, but you better step up because you got a lot to live up to.
No pressure at all. I would just like to add that I have a senior this year who has benefited from CTE classes, and he's headed off to business school next year. And marketing, life and finance, even digital design have all given him a taste for what that career path might be like. So it's very important to me and my family as well. So whereas Career and Technical Education offers students the opportunity to gain the academic, technical, and employability skills necessary for true career readiness, and Whereas students in career and technical education programs participate in authentic, meaningful experiences that improve the quality of their education and increase student engagement and achievement. And whereas career and technical education provides students with career exploration opportunities earlier in their educational experience, which enables them to make informed and beneficial decisions about their academic coursework, as well as pursuit of established programs of study and career pathways. And whereas leaders from business and industry nationwide report increasing challenges related to the skills gap and connecting qualified professionals with available careers in critical and growing CTE-related fields, including healthcare, energy, advanced manufacturing, and information technology. And whereas career and technical education prepares students for these and other fulfilling careers by offering integrated programs of study that link secondary and post-secondary education and lead to the attainment of industry-recognized credentials, and whereas ensuring that employers have access to a qualified workforce is a crucial step in ensuring productivity among the business and industry committees, as well as continued American economic growth and global competitiveness. And whereas Lake Washington School District has approximately 8,045 students participating in 124 different career and technical education course options taught by 101 career and technical education teachers, therefore, the Board of Directors do hereby proclaim February 1st through 28th, 2019 as Career and Technical Education Month.
Thank you.
And if I could add one more unrelated recognition, tomorrow is Director Stewart's birthday, so we are recognizing him whereas he is turning 39 again.
I'll be celebrating that at the Special Needs PTSA tomorrow night here in this room. So.
All right, thank you very much. So our next step is we have our host school here tonight. So once a month, we do have a school in our district who comes to present. We did have the opportunity to also tour that school things firsthand, and so I would like to turn it over now to Dr. Stavum so she can make the introduction.
Yes, and I believe we will begin with our introductory video. If it's ready to roll. Not ready to roll, therefore we will introduce Principal John Young, who has brought many people with him this evening to represent Redmond Middle School.
We're at Redmond Middle School, home of the Grizzlies.
We're using that substitution method. Y equals x plus 5, y equals 6.
You know, we sit on top of Education Hill. I think that's the neatest thing, being a school principal, to have your school on top of Education Hill. We feed our students into Redmond High School, and it really is that community venture. I think that's why we are Redmond Middle School. We have a kind and caring staff that's here for kids. We have a culture of collaboration both for kids and for adults. We build that into a lot of what we do in our instruction. That idea that we learn best from one another is foundational.
Everybody says what their point of confusion is.
We have a very supportive community in Redmond. One of our programs is AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination. It's not only an elective for students to help build study skills and strong student habits so that they can be successful in post-high school education.
So you said you came up with 3 reasons?
I'm an avid volunteer. I come in Tuesday and Thursday. I work with the 8th graders doing tutorials and facilitating groups. We encourage the students to sharpen their organizational skills, their critical thinking, and they get up and present in front of their peers. So we've seen tremendous growth over the year.
We're going to include in this breakup room. I think this school has a really positive community. Everyone's always supporting each other, and especially the staff. They're really supportive and always there for you if you ever need it. There's always someone to say hi to and talk to, and everyone's just always looking out for you. So if you ever need any help with anything, they're always going to be there to support you.
One of our duties is to make sure that we're supporting the needs of all students through systemic programming. So we love a lot of the things that the district is doing right now to support that.
We always say middle school is a great time to explore. So if you take a class and maybe it's not your favorite class. That's okay. At least you know that what you like and what you don't. So we try to get them to try as many different things as they can.
I play the clarinet. I tell them it's a really great opportunity to meet and interact with a lot of people. At the same time, it can just help your life skills in general, learning to work as a team instead of, you can't just have one instrument just blaring out all the time. It's all the instruments together that work together. So it's a great way for teamwork in general, and it's just a lot of fun at the same time.
And we're gonna do really fast, I notice. One of the main goals I had coming into this year was I'm really, really passionate about my community and making my classroom a community. And my management is so much easier because I've taught them how we speak to each other, how we value different ideas, etc. And so when someone needs help, I can say, hey, I just taught that to so-and-so. And then they trust each other to learn from each other. And then I can really focus in with students who really need more one-on-one support from me.
The staff and the parents in the community are so passionate about kids having the best school experience they can have and childhood experience they can have, whether it's inside the classroom or in extracurricular activities.
What's my first step in trying to get X all by itself?
The trust that you get with kids and adult to adult can make magical things happen.
Tell me what you like about having two teachers in your classroom.
You get lots of support from both teachers.
We have more time to check in with students. If one of us is up in the front, the other one is kind of making sure the students are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
They make math sound cool. That's why I like it.
We had these kids in 7th grade and 8th grade, so it's nice that in September we knew all these students, the expectations, and we hit the floor running, and it's nice to watch these kids go from where they were in 7th grade to where they are now.
If you're going to tell someone it's very, very fine, can you compare it to something like sand on the beach?
The things that we try and do is to incorporate all of the diversity in our community to make sure that wherever you're from or whoever you are, you can access the school and get the most out of your kids' education. And we set out by defining what we want our students to do, the Grizzly way. We're kind, honest, and proud. We will find a program for you that's interesting to you to get you hooked into school if you're a student here. Thank you to John Nor, our district videographer, for putting that together. It really did tell our Grizzly story very well. Greetings to Dr. Stavum, President Blazner, and the rest of the school board tonight. Thank you for hosting us at tonight's meeting. My name is John Young. I am proud to be the principal at Redmond Middle School.
John, you're projecting great, but I'm not sure your mic's on. Is it green? Oh, it is. Okay.
Am I picking up okay? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Carlson. I'll speak closer. At any rate, I am proud to be the principal at Redmond Middle School. We are a growing and diverse community. We are focused on building strong relationships while balancing academic support with rigor. I want to thank Dr. Stavum and President Blazner for visiting us before the break, and it was a privilege to welcome you to the Grizzly family. The Grizzly Way, as you heard in the video, is the guiding work. We are in the second year of our Positive Behavior Intervention and Support Initiative, PBIS. This is defining common expectations for students in various zones throughout the school. What does it mean to be kind in the bathroom? What does it mean to be proud in the assemblies? And how do you model your honesty in the classroom? We explicitly teach students those behavioral expectations to build that sense of community, and that positive interactions are much more effective. We've spent a good deal of time during our afternoon LEAP sessions with staff developing how they build those relationships and that PBIS program. We model our kindness. We have a staff that cares deeply about students. All of our staff is thoroughly invested in each kid that comes through our door. There's some supports that we have put in place for our students. Grizzly Time, this is a period built into our day that students can get extra help on homework, go to a teacher to make up a quiz, that intervention program, but it's also where we embed those lessons to help students learn the Grizzly Way, and some other social emotional curriculum is embedded during that time. Another program that we're proud of is our partnership with the City of Redmond. We have an after-school study lab. This is 4 days a week where we partner with them to provide some of the staffing and then some of our own staff to give students some time after the school day if they do need even more support. We've been fortunate enough to be able to have an activity bus to get kids home from that as well. When we speak about kindness, I think the Healthy Youth Survey is a perceptual survey that the state gives to all students every 2 years. At the middle level, we survey 6th and 8th graders. It really does speak to how our students are receiving our kind efforts. We know that our data isn't perfect, but we are proud to see that we have about half as many students identifying bullying incidences as the state average. And more importantly, the vast majority of our students know how to report it. They know how to tell us if something is not going right in our school. This is more important for us. These are students that identify they're feeling safe. And as you can see, about 90% of our students can identify a kind, caring adult in their building that they would feel safe sharing their concerns with. And this is a number we're continuing to see improve. This is a slide that we are, I think, most proud of. So since the launch of our PBIS program 2 years ago, we have cut our suspension rate in half. We are keeping kids engaged in the school, and they're making better choices as a result. This chart here, if you look in the blue, was last school year. The gray is this school year, and these are the minor discipline things that kids would typically get a lunch detention for or an office referral. We are seeing a month-to-month reduction even from last year through our efforts on the PBIS program. I would now like to introduce Nicole Mattingly, one of our associate principals, to share some of our areas of strength and potential growth and really model that honesty.
All right. Good evening, and thank you for having us here this evening. So, as John mentioned, I would like to spend some time talking about how we really have a culture of honesty at Redmond Middle School, and particularly amongst our staff. So we are very proud that we have a culture of cooperation and collaboration. That culture flourishes because of our staff's ability to be honest with each other, particularly around their practices and in our data. And so you'll see here some of our Smarter Balanced Assessment data. This is in English Language Arts. We spent time as a staff looking over this at the beginning of the year and then celebrating our data, but also focusing on the areas of growth. What I would like to point out is that our most recent year's data is shown in blue, but you can also see historical trends in our data, and this assessment given at the end of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Something we are really proud of is that our students are consistently at 75 to 80% meeting or exceeding standard. But as you will see down at the bottom, we do still have achievement gaps in areas of growth, particularly for our students receiving English language learning services, special education services, and students whose families are low income. And so our staff identified that these are areas of growth that we need to focus on, and we have LEAP time, that's our after school on Wednesday professional learning, with really intentional learning about different programs that we can bring in to support our students in closing that achievement gap. So this year we have started the conversations with our staff around culturally responsive teaching and the practices in the classroom to help support our students. In SIOP, which is Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol, we have 2 excellent teacher leaders who are guiding our staff through this work of really that framework and those practices to, SIOP was originally created to support English language learners, but we've identified and discussed as a staff that this is great instruction for all learners. And so we are starting that journey this year. We're also spending time continuing the conversation and learning around PBIS so we can talk about how to support our students. And then last but not least, as you saw mentioned in the video, we are an AVID school. And so in addition to our 2 AVID classes in 7th and 8th grade, spending time as a staff talking about school-wide strategies to engage and support our students. Again, with all of those with the intent of closing that achievement gap. And so we have identified school-wide goals in our school improvement plan, and then many of our teachers have actually nested their goals in their professional growth plans to also target those specific student groups and how they can support them. You will see on this next slide that this is again Smarter Balanced Assessment results, and this time in the area of math. So again, with blue being our most recent year, and then the 3 years prior in gray. What I would like you to focus on in particular, and I would like to draw your attention, is to our 8th grade results. So with last year, you'll see that 74.9% of our students met or exceeded standard, which is quite a significant increase from the year prior to that. And something we attribute that to is what you saw in the video is our co-taught safety net math program. So students in 6th grade at the end of the year who are below standard in math are placed into our safety net program. That's a smaller group of students with 2 certificated teachers. They stay with those teachers for 2 years. So they have the opportunity to develop relationships in the class and with those teachers to really build their confidence in math and then make gains as we are seeing here in our data. So that is something we are very proud of. And then last but not least is our science assessment data. And so you'll see this slide looks a little bit different because there's only one data point, and that is because, as you know, the WCAS was just rolled out last year across the state of Washington. We are very proud that 73.8% of our 8th graders met or exceeded standards. We attribute this to our science teachers' commitment to the ambitious science teaching model, which really meets the rigor of the next generation science standards. So we're looking forward to seeing continued data and growth in that area as well. And so with that, I would like to turn it over to our other associate principal, Drew Williams.
Thank you, Nicole. So I'm going to discuss some things that we're very proud of at RMS, and there's many things, but one of the most important things is our PTSA. We cannot thank them enough. They're amazing, they're wonderful. Anything we ask for, they are willing to step up and provide for our school and our students. We're also very proud about our diversity at the school. We're a very diverse student population, and I'll show you some demographics on that. So as you can see in front of you, we have a very diverse population. We have actually 45 different home languages being spoke in our school. And so we have students coming from 6 different feeder elementaries, and then once they leave us, they go to Redmond High School. We host a Quest program as well, and those students come from Smith Elementary, and we also have a transition room and a resource room, and so we really strive inclusion. Sorry, I'm spacing out. Pardon me. Inclusion for all students, and so Nicole kind of talked a little bit more about that co-taught model, and that's one of the strategies we use. This is data from Season 1 and Season 2 athletic participation, and this kind of speaks, again, how students are feeling plugged into our school and part of our community. As you can see, it's broken down by different ethnicities, and so the blue bar is the percent of RMS population, and then the gray bar is percent of student athletes. And so ideally, we would like to see those 2 bars very similar to each other, but we still have very strong participation numbers. Students feel like they are engaged with the school outside of the classroom, and so we're very proud of that as well. Next up, I'd like to introduce 8th grader Sohail Bhatia, and he's going to speak a little bit more about extracurricular opportunities.
All right, thank you, Mr. Williams. Just a hello to the LWSD board. My name is Sohail Bhatia. I've been part of the student leadership of RMS for the past 3 years, and so I've had some experience in that area. And now I'll be speaking about the opportunities in RMS that we've provided throughout the years. So to start off, we provide a wide range of opportunities during and after school, and these include sports, our music programs, and our PTSA clubs, and overall just our RMS clubs. To start off for sports, we allow sports for pretty much everyone in our school. It's a very diverse community, so anyone can participate in a sport, and these include soccer, basketball, volleyball, badminton, and basically students compete in various games throughout their season. So next up, I'd like to talk about our music programs. And for our music programs, we run through 3 main points. These include the orchestra, the band, and the choir. And along with these music programs, here at RMS, we really believe in challenging students to the next level. If we bring students to the next level, they'll be able to perform at the next level and develop skills at the next level. And so, along with these music programs, we have select programs which include the honors band and orchestra and the chamber orchestra. This allows students to, perform at higher levels, learn new music, and overall just improve their skills. So for our RMS clubs, we allow all students to join or form a club, and this way they're exposed to a wide range of opportunities, and they explore new interests and meet new people. So as I said, I'm a student leader. I've had experience for the past 3 years, and so now I just want to really share my experience as a student leader. So what I've noticed is throughout the 3 years is that RMS really brings students at the forefront of student leadership. They really, the parents, the teachers, the staff members, they really take a step back and they say, hey, let's let the students take the step this time. And the students are really the ones who are leading the events at RMS. They get really, they lead themselves and then they lead their team. And together with this journey, they develop the skills such as patience, teamwork, collaboration, and team building. And that's what we really believe in RMS. If we prepare our students right now for what this is, this leadership skills and these team working skills, in the future, they'll start to succeed. And so that's how our student leadership works. We want students to be at the forefront of student leadership. They're running the events, they're running the show. And so our student leadership, they run through 3 main points. These points include our Leadership 1 elective, our Leadership 2 elective, and our ASB Student Council. So for our ASB Student Council, we require all students who are wishing to be a rep to run through an election process, and this way they can become a 6th grade, 7th grade, or 8th grade rep. And then our Leadership 1 elective, it's the beginning of our leadership electives, and it's open to all grades, so 6 through 8. And then from there, a notch up is our Leadership 2 elective, which requires the completion of the Leadership 1 elective. And so I've talked about a little bit of our leadership, but now I'd really like to talk about our RMS PTSA clubs. So this is kind of expressing the diversity we see at RMS. So I'm just gonna skip to the next slide. And so what you really see here is our RMS PTSA math and science clubs. And so what this represents is kind of how much growth we've had over the years. You can see in year 1, we started our RMS PTSA science club, and it started off with 25 students. And now, in 2019, we have over 110 students. Same thing applies for our RMS PTSA Math Club. It started off with 50 students and now has over 114 students. That really expresses the diversity and interest that students are having throughout the years. And so evidently, what we've seen is the more diversity that we have, the more population, the more interest, the more success we've been having. So to wrap up, I just really like to say that RMS has provided a comprehensive educational opportunity for all of these students. And I personally believe that RMS has a holistic and well-rounded approach to getting students interested in intellectual, moral, and then just physical opportunities. So they're really developing their interests early, and then in the future, they're becoming these well-rounded CEOs, entrepreneurs, what we've always believed here at LWSD, preparing students for a future-ready future. Thank you.
That is a tough act to follow. Thank you, Sohail. At any rate, I will just wrap up by saying thank you again for hosting, and I really want to thank the Grizzly family that came out to support us tonight. It meant a lot to me and made this a lot easier to get through. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. It was fabulous to be able to hear those things, and it was great being able to visit and see them all in person, to be able to actually see Mr. Mahendran again when he taught at Rockwell when my kids were there. So it was fabulous to be able to see him in action. So thank you very much for all that you do and for everybody for coming out this evening. With that, we would like to move on to the Timberline mascot. And so with this, I'm going to ask Dr. Stevem yet again to process that one through.
And I'm going to ask Dr. Holman to come forward. He's been shepherding that process with our whole anticipation around what the mascot's going to be. I don't even know what it is yet, so this is pretty exciting.
We keep things top secret and confidential as long as possible. And just as a side note, I remember seeing Mr. Mahendran playing in the Einstein-Rockwell basketball game back in the day, so he has been around for a little while. Anyways, tonight we are here to yet again celebrate our new middle school, Timberline Middle School. I can assure you again that Principal Paul has gone through all of the processes and procedures to validate this mascot this evening. I'm so proud and pleased to introduce you again to Heidi as she comes and talks about the new mascot.
Good evening. This is a very exciting historical moment for our school, and we've been anticipating this evening. We are excited to share that through student vote, we have a proposed mascot for you tonight. In December, our student body passed forward 85 mascot ideas. The naming committee worked hard to determine 6 mascot ideas that would best represent our school, and most specifically, we considered several factors. We wanted our mascot options to be culturally sensitive. We also wanted our mascot option to be unique within our feeder pattern and level. And we also wanted to make sure our mascot united the community, and also we wanted to avoid alienating a particular group or person in doing so. As a part of our naming committee, I would like to introduce 3 members who served on this team with me. First, a 6th grade student, Kimberly Ong, a future 6th grade student, a future 7th grade student. We have Priyanka Kudalur, and we also have one of our staff members, our ELL teacher, Jocelyn Zwink. They're going to tell you a little bit more about the details.
The mascot voting options identified by our naming committee and voted by our student body were Timberwolves, Hawks, Owls, Osprey, Lynx, and Tigers.
As a representation of the school, mascots are an important part of school culture. They symbolize qualities of a population and can unite a student body. Through the voting process, the student and staff community used their voice to choose our school mascot. As students and staff considered this important historical vote, they were prompted to consider our school attributes. First off, empathy. We believe an empathic student will listen and learn to understand the experiences of unique individuals. Resilience. We believe a resilient student will have the courage to face obstacles with persistence. Kindness. We believe a kind student will intentionally value others. Integrity. We believe a student with integrity will choose to do the right thing even when it isn't easy or popular. And finally, service. We believe a student will see a need and meet that need by serving.
Voting closed on January 10th. The proposed mascot for Timberline Middle School is the Timberwolves. Also known as gray wolves, Timberwolves live in the upper elevations of the local area. Timberwolves are pack animals that rely on their community and value connection. They display resilience and courage. Timberwolves also trust their instincts. We believe that the Timberwolf is a meaningful symbol that will represent our students and unite a school community. Thank you.
Very
Feel free.
exciting. Now we'll have to get used to saying the Timberline Timberwolves. Awesome. That's going to be fun now to see how that begins to shape your new school. Thanks for all your work with that, everyone, and thank you for keeping it a big secret until tonight.
Yes, thank you very much. That was fabulous, and thank you for coming and sharing with that. We have some board work we have to do with this at that moment. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
And any discussion?
Well, I do love the pack principle, but Timberwolves, Timberline is going to be a bit of a mouthful. So good luck with the alliteration.
But at least you don't have to learn how to spell links correctly.
Seeing no other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. Motion carries. Congratulations. So it is exciting that our middle school now has a name, Timberline Middle School, as well as a mascot of the Timberwolf. So very exciting, and thanks for all your hard work in getting that done. And with that, that actually completed our non-consent agenda for tonight, and so we will actually move to the program report. I'm sorry, we aren't going to do that yet. We're going to do public comment first instead. However, no one was signed up for public comment, so we will continue. For those of you who have, we are going to now move into the rest of our business meeting. Please take the opportunity. You can please feel free to go. We appreciate your coming. You are welcome to stay, or you can watch it on video at home as well. But I do want to feel free, and thank you so much for coming.
We know it's a hot ticket to get in here, so, but, you know, you had to scalp.
Go home, do homework.
So with that, we will now move on to the program report and hand that off to Oh, I'm sorry, I should really look at the agenda a little more closely. We have board reorg to do first. And so with that, I will hand that off to Dr. Stalem as she goes through that.
Yes, tonight there are 3 positions open for the Board of Directors. I will hold the temporary chair until the president is elected, and the process will be to call for nominations and then declare the nominations closed. So I would open up nominations for the president of Lake Washington School Board. There are nominations.
I would like to nominate Sherry Bleasner. This is a time of transition, and a time of transition means that we have to have a constant. And she's been a very great leader for the last year, and I think we need a second year from her.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, Siri Bleasner has been nominated for the president of Lake Washington School Board, and the nominations do not need a second. So are there any other nominations? And you already said no. So as there are no other nominations for president of the board, I declare nominations to be closed. There's been 1 nomination for president, and that is Siri Bleasner. All in favor of Siri as president signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Siri Bleasner is elected by unanimous vote to be president. And congratulations, Siri, and you will now take back over to elect a vice president.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and am honored to be able to do so. And from there, nominations are now open for vice president of the board.
I would like to nominate Mark Stewart for vice president.
So Director Stewart has been nominated for vice president of the board. Are there any other nominations for vice president of the board? As there are no other nominations for vice president of the board, I declare the nominations to be closed. There has been 1 nomination for vice president, and that is Director Mark Stewart. All in favor of Director Mark Stewart as vice president signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And with that, Director Mark Stewart, you are elected by unanimous vote to be vice president. Thank you very much. And now we have 1 last position, and that will be our legislative representative. And so nominations are now open for the legislative representative of the board.
I'd like to nominate Eric.
Do you know how to say my last name?
I am blanking on it, just a little bit too much jet lag. Eric LaLiberty, I got it. I should have written it down. It's a really complicated sentence. I almost had it. So,
You wasted all your talent on the proclamation. That's a
I know, I
problem.
was still on the proclamation.
So Director Eric LaLiberty has been nominated for Ledge Rep of the board. Are there any other nominations for Ledge Rep of the board? Any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations for Ledge Rep of the board, I do declare the nominations to be closed. There has been 1 nomination for Ledge Rep, and that is Director Eric LaLiberty. All in favor of Director LaLiberty as legislative rep signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Director LaLiberty is elected by unanimous vote to be our legislative representative. Congratulations and thank you. So we have now reorganized the board.
And thank you to all of you.
So with that, we will now move to the consent agenda. So I will accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director Sage to approve the consent agenda. Dr. Staven, would you poll the board?
Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Siri?
Yes.
Cassandra?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
And Dr. Staven, could you please summarize the donations?
I would love to.
Thank you.
This month, we have no amount to recognize from the foundation. From PTSA, we have $153,788.25 as a collective amount. And from private sources, we have $33,000 for a grand total of $186,788.25. And we certainly express our appreciation to all of our partners who give so generously to our district.
Yes, thank you very much. And from there, we will now move to the program report. I have a feeling it's just because I'm very excited. It's about our dual language and world language programs. So I just was dying to hear about it a little sooner. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Steven, and she can invite up who needs to come.
Yes, and I will invite up Mike Van Orden, our Associate Superintendent, and he will give us on both foreign language as well as dual language program implementation.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak on some really wonderful programs as well in our classrooms K-12, including world language offerings, world language experiences, and you mentioned our dual language program. I will spend a little bit more time on the dual language program tonight to give you some details on the current state of that program as well as our plans for the future, and then also give you an update on some of our data related to our achievement in world languages. So as you can recall from our past program reports, we are really focusing on our academic program and the end results associated with that academic program. And so in this area in particular, we're looking at literacy in language, communication, collaboration, local and global citizenship skills. We also like to touch on our standards that are the foundation for our world language programs. As you recall from past presentations, world language standards are not simply speaking the language, but they're a whole series of standards related to world languages, related to communication, culture, connecting with other people, making comparisons in the communities that are established through language and culture. So our world language programs, as we look in the elementary level, we really are focusing on that culture, connection, and communities standards that I mentioned earlier. We have, through our music program, wonderful world language songs and performances that students are doing. We emphasize cultures of other world languages in our social studies curriculum. We have assemblies and seasonal celebrations that recognize language, international nights, and then our PTSAs also sponsor after-school language programs, including French, Mandarin, and Spanish that students can take as part of our elementary experience. And then, as I mentioned, we wanted to spend a little bit more time tonight talking about our new dual language program that is happening at Einstein Elementary. There are a few people I wanted to recognize as we're working on that tonight. Robin Amai, the principal at Einstein Elementary, is just a tireless advocate for world language. She's working closely with the teachers, parents, community to really make sure that the program's successful. Our two teachers, Patty Gomez and Amy Silverman, are putting in countless hours to build a new program from scratch. And they are supported by Nicole Rodriguez, one of our specialists, as well as Jen Roberts, who's an EL specialist, and finally Sue Ann Sullivan. I think without these people really putting in lots of time and energy and commitment, the program wouldn't be successful. And so I wanted to acknowledge them tonight. So I wanted to start by giving you an overview of what our dual language program looks like currently. In our program, we have kindergarten and first grade classes. The students in those classes receive approximately 50% of the instruction during the day entirely in Spanish. So there's not any English spoken by the staff in the classroom during that portion of the day. So Patty Gomez, the teacher I had mentioned, will give everything in Spanish. So that's instruction, procedures for the classroom, responding to kids. We also have some instructional assistant time in there with a person who's bilingual as well. And the idea is that immersion in the language is probably the best way for students to learn another language. Then the students spend the other 50% of their day learning entirely in English, though we are making what we call bridges between the two languages in both classes. So teachers are very intentional about talking about the connections of language. So currently in kindergarten, we have 9 native Spanish speakers and 10 native English speakers. And so that's part of the 50-50 as well, is about half the class is native Spanish speaking and half the class is native English speaking. And then in first grade, we're looking at an equal combination, 11 Spanish speaking and 11 English speaking. In that class, all students are learning 2 languages. So they're learning English and Spanish, and we're assessing in both languages. So we're assessing reading comprehension in Spanish and English. We're assessing math in Spanish and English so that we can make sure that kids are making progress. Because our goal is for our kids to be bilingual and biliterate. We want them to be able to read, write, and speak in Spanish, and we also want them to demonstrate high academic achievement. I'm going to share with you some data in a little bit that shows the performance of students that are in dual language programs and how they do over time. We also are looking at those cross-cultural knowledge and skills. We're finding that our students are sharing examples of their own culture in their classrooms. They're sharing that with each other and with their school community. Just at our parent night the other night, one of the parents asked about whether students are being kind of isolated, and she was saying, no, in fact, this is causing them to go out and make more friends and share their experiences because they're really proud of what they're bringing to the classroom and their cultural knowledge and experiences that they're sharing with each other. So as I mentioned, I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of the way the class is structured currently to maybe visualize it a little bit more. So as I mentioned, we have two classes. We have a kindergarten class and a first grade class. So in the morning, the kindergarten students work with our bilingual teacher, Patty Gomez, and they get their instruction entirely in English. And so as I mentioned, there's about 50% native English speakers, 50% native Spanish speakers. They're getting instruction in Spanish language arts, so that's reading and writing in Spanish, as well as math. And then in the afternoon, they walk over to the other teacher's classroom, that's Amy Silverman, and they get kindergarten instruction from her in English language arts, science, and social studies. And then the first graders do the opposite. So they have instruction in English in the morning, and then they come to the dual language teacher in the afternoon. So that's our model. The reason we set that up was that allowed us to potentially have the need to hire fewer teachers. So rather than having a bilingual teacher at every single grade level with a pool that's very shallow right now in terms of really high quality instructors for dual language, that would allow us to put one teacher per every 2 grade levels. So more on that in a moment, but that was kind of our thinking behind that. There are models, for example, in Bellevue where there's a teacher that's bilingual that the students are with all day and a major portion of the day is in Spanish. So with that, I wanted to talk about what we're proposing or what we're looking at for next year. What we're finding, particularly in kindergarten, as students are introduced to the languages, that time that's actually devoted to Spanish, though our goal is to have it be 50%, when you look at music and PE and recess and lunch and assemblies, that time starts to become much less than 50%. So what we're looking at for next year, since we were going to have to bring on a new dual language teacher anyway, because we're adding a new class every year, is that we would have our current bilingual Spanish teacher teach what we call an 80-20 model for kindergarten. So 80% of their day is actually in the Spanish language, and then 20% is in English. And so the English portion of that would be English language arts. And then remember, students are also in PE, and they're in library, and they're in music, and so they're receiving English instruction in those classes as well. And then the current 2 classes that are K and 1 right now will be first and second. They'll stay with the same model next year with a new teacher that we're bringing on that will partner with Amy Silverman, so that we'll have a very similar model. Their experience will be very similar. And again, the thinking there is that we were going to bring on a teacher anyway, and that we also know that if kids do get more exposure in those first few years, which is what we're seeing in districts that have a little bit more established programs, that students do acquire the language more rapidly. So a couple of the other benefits, or a few of the other benefits we wanted to mention, we are looking not only to have students be bilingual, speaking both languages, but we also want them to be biliterate. So they should be able to read and write in Spanish by the time they exit the program. We want them to also have understanding of Latin culture, Latino culture, and so we're building that into the social studies curriculum. We also know that having those skills will help students to have more opportunities for careers later on. I'm going to share a few pieces of data in a moment that will bring that out. We also know that students learn best when they're in immersion programs. So learning a new language through an immersion program really is probably the best way. There was, I think, a study I shared last year when we were talking about the new dual language program that was put together by the Foreign Services Institute for the amount of time it takes to learn a language. So languages like Spanish are about 600 hours of instruction to actually learn the language. Languages like Chinese and Japanese are actually up in 2,200 hours. And so we know, for example, if we decided we were going to give an hour of Spanish instruction a week like we do for our other specialists like music and PE, that over the course of the year that would be about 36 hours of instruction. And so that's probably not going to get us to that 600 hours very quickly. Whereas if you're immersed in language, you get much more intensive instruction that you do acquire the language more rapidly. And so that's kind of the idea behind an immersion program, is that it takes time to learn another language, and being immersed in the language, students learn more effectively. There's also some facts that we wanted to share, I think, that highlight the value of a language program in Spanish. You may not have known this, but Spanish is the second most spoken language in the world, and it's the official language of 22 countries. And in the US, it's the second most spoken language after English. And in fact, we have the second largest population of Spanish speakers in the world after Mexico. And so there's a real opportunity there for students who are biliterate and bilingual to have success in careers and opportunities, not only here in the US, but globally by learning another language. So we're seeing value and benefit for all of our students who are acquiring Spanish and have biliteracy and bilingualism skills. We also wanted to point out just some of the other program benefits. So remember we said one of our goals was high academic achievement. So there have been a number of studies that have been done on dual language programs over the years. We looked at these as we were developing our programs. One of the findings is that over time, students in bilingual dual immersion programs actually start to outperform their peers in reading achievement. Now that's over time, and that's a really important note. There is typically a lag for the first few years, K3, K4, whereas students are learning two languages, they lag behind the performance of their peers to a small extent. And that varies from student to student because they're learning two languages. But then over time, by about 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, we do start to see that students in dual language programs actually start to perform slightly better than their peers, particularly in reading and math. And so I'll share some data on that in a moment with you. But we also want to make sure people know this. We share this with our families. We're sharing it with our program staff, is that you will expect that, for example, when we see those first 3rd grade SBA scores, that scores might be a little bit lower than kids in the other classes. But by 4th and 5th grade, those actually start to do what we saw in our ELL program data, is that kids start to outperform their peers. And so a couple examples of that. This was a study that was done in Chicago in 2013. They selected, I think, about 2009 students randomly from dual language immersion programs and non-dual language immersion programs. And they did see that there seemed to be some relationship between being enrolled in the program and higher academic achievements, particularly starting in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, both in reading and in math. And this applied both to native Spanish-speaking students as well as the native English-speaking students. So native Spanish-speaking students compared to their peers performed at a higher and more effective rate. Similarly, native English-speaking students seemed to perform higher than their peers in reading as well as in math. Again, there's some variation in that data, but other studies have kind of shown a similar thing. If you have a high quality program, there seems to be some relationship between learning those two languages and acquiring those reading and math skills that do benefit students. So we're seeing some value in that for all of our students. Even more so though, students leave programs bilingual and biliterate, and that's a real value for our kiddos. So to wrap up, in terms of just kind of where we're headed, we wanted to give you how this program will develop over the next few years. This year we have kindergarten and 1st grade, and as I mentioned, we have one bilingual teacher and one teaching partner. Next year we're looking at having that kindergarten be a standalone class, and then 1st and 2nd grade will be the combined class with one teaching partner and 2 bilingual teachers. Then I think what we're looking at, depending on how that kindergarten goes, is having our kindergarten and 1st grade being exclusively with bilingual teachers. And then having our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th and 5th grade classes be the partner combination I mentioned. So that's one more teacher than we originally planned, but as we looked at neighboring districts, what they seem to typically do, if they can get enough good teachers, is have a 90-10 or 80-20 model, which is, as I mentioned, 90% of the day or 80% of the day in Spanish, 10 to 20% in English in the primary grades, and then they start to reduce that and get closer to 50-50 as they progress. We think we can staff that. Again, that's probably going to be one of our biggest challenges, finding really high quality teachers, but we have the capacity, and we think that might be a model that kind of improves the services that we're delivering. So ultimately, we'd be looking at 4 bilingual teachers and 2 partner teachers in the school that would be delivering the program, and that would be fully actualized in 2022-23. The other thing that's not up here that we mentioned briefly is that we are looking at these students having the opportunity to feed into a middle school program. So ideally it'll be our new Timberline middle school. And there what students typically have are some options for courses that are taught entirely in Spanish that they can take. And so those are typically courses like social studies or science, where students can have the choice to enter the program and have those options available to them. So there'll be some options for kids that exit this program. So that's our dual language program update. I'm happy to continue moving forward through middle school and high school, but I also wonder if you want me to pause and take the lead on this?
I would say let's go ahead and check to see if there are questions, so we can just focus on the dual language piece. So, Director
Definitely.
Carlson.
Well, I have one practical question, and actually I guess there's two practical questions. This is more than your standard team teaching, and will these crossover teachers get extra planning time? I mean, I don't know how you handle that.
What we have been doing is providing both planning time as well as training. So they're meeting, Nicole Rodriguez, the specialist I mentioned, is serving as a coach and facilitator and coordinator for the two teachers. So we're providing planning time both in terms of release during the day as well as after school and before school planning and summer planning. We're also bringing in trainers to help kind of build their content knowledge. So particularly when you have a new program that's starting, you don't have a lot of people to say, hey, go look and see how they do it in this class. Like a district like Bellevue that has a really well-established program, you can send your teachers to see dual language in action, and ultimately we'll be there. But those first few years, it's important to bring in outside expertise, so we're looking at that as well.
Okay, and the second question is, our reading acquisition metric is DIBELS.
Yes.
Nonsense words will be a little bit harder to judge on the basis of which language you're reading them in.
Absolutely true.
So how are you going to handle that?
We have a Spanish language version of DIBELS that does the sounds in Spanish. We're also looking at a more robust Spanish language and English language reading assessment as well that are both in Spanish and English. We have similar for math, but that doesn't have the same challenges you're mentioning there, which is the language, the sounds of the letters.
But how do you say DIBELS in Spanish? That's the question.
You know, it's actually got an interesting name. I'll send it to you. I think it's IDEL is the name of it. Yeah.
Direct, do you have any other?
No, just in reference to the difficulty for finding any teachers with foreign language credentials. Do we already have that posted, our position for next year? Okay, I assume.
It is going up tomorrow, so tomorrow is the 15th, it's going up tomorrow with our other postings, and we have that one specifically for that course, or for that program.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. You're right, though, the difference here is, it's not simply being a world language teacher, we're looking for someone who speaks as a native, because we want students to be hearing Spanish from a native tongue. There are instructional strategies that are different in a bilingual program or a dual language program. And what we're finding is colleges aren't producing a lot of these in this region. University of Washington is starting to look at a program, and OSPI is starting to look at recruiting and trying to build pipelines for dual language programs because it's becoming much more popular in our region.
Given the fact that Spanish, just as most languages, have so many dialects, is there one dialect that you will be using more so than another, or exclusively?
You know, so we were looking for native speakers. If I remember correctly, I think Patty's from Venezuela. We actually had a person, one of our parent volunteers who's native Venezuelan as well, on the interview committee to be that person to listen for that correct pronunciation. But you're correct, there are dialects.
Yeah.
We're more interested in kind of the core language speaking skills, knowing that there will be some dialects. We'd rather have that dialect be a native Spanish speaking dialect than an English version. Or
No, the only reason I ask is, having spent 10 years in New York, students in Chicago going to New York, it was two different languages because it was primarily Puerto Rican Spanish.
So a question that I have, you spoke about non-native English or native English speakers being able to, and native Spanish speakers, since we have such a broad population of languages spoken and many people's primary language might not be English nor Spanish.
Yes.
Do they have capacity to be in this program?
Yes, we actually, this most recent time, we have some families that are not native English speakers, but they are English speaking primarily now. So families from India were asking at our last night, well, can they learn 3 languages? And yes, they can be speaking Indian at home and be speaking English, be the English speaker in the class and be learning Spanish as well.
Great, so as long as we're marketing that, my concern was that when you said native, that was sort of was limiting,
yeah, we've
was
been
my
saying
concern.
yeah.
The other piece that just to be aware of is at the OSPI, so Superintendent Rakedahl has come out very strongly in favor of dual language immersion. And budget proposals at the legislative level is to support this and really working at how do we support getting staff and teachers who are able to do this in ways in which to incentivize and recruit. So this really is not just locally, but something definitely statewide that is being recognized as something very valuable of getting multilingual, multicultural for everybody within our world as this 21st century workforce. So it's excellent. We're starting down that path, and with that, there's lots more resources also coming into that. So to just pay attention to all those things with the dual language. Any other questions? If not, I will have Mike continue on. Thank you very much.
So to our middle school program. We start to get specialized in middle school because we have course or content-specific courses. And so at our middle schools, we offer Spanish and French at all of our middle schools. And then we also have Japanese at Redmond Middle School. That program feeds into Redmond High School and Eastlake High School. And then Stella Scala, students are learning Latin. And so each of those courses that are highlighted up there, Spanish, French, and Japanese, also allows students to earn high school credit. And so I'll show you some data in a little bit about enrollment patterns, but that is a wonderful opportunity for students to start early in 8th grade, beginning high school credit, and then continue to take advanced coursework in high school. For all of our courses in middle and high school, we offer a really rich and wonderful set of curriculum materials that are reviewed on an adoption cycle, like all of our curriculum areas. And we work with our staff to identify standards that are important to make sure that all kids get, as well as tools to assess students on those standards. So then moving into the high school, we offer in all of our high schools Spanish, French, Japanese, and American Sign Language. In our high schools, we offer Spanish 1 through, and that should say 4 is kind of the level, and then 5 we consider kind of an AP or advanced placement course. So students could, if they started taking, for example, Spanish as an 8th grader, could take multiple years of Spanish in an AP class as well. We also have American Sign Language, which I'll show you some data on in a few minutes. There were some questions about enrollment patterns for that, and just why do we not see a fourth year or fourth level American Sign Language class. And as I said, I'll share some data and explain why we think that is. As I mentioned, though, we do make sure that our teachers have and our students have curriculum materials in all of those areas. So French, Spanish, Japanese, and ASL, we have core curriculum that all of our teachers use. And then we also want to point out that at the high school level in particular, about 80+ % of our high schools have some kind of world language club for students to have opportunities to really practice the language. I've talked to multiple people on this, including Jane Todd, who used to be a world language teacher, as well as my daughter, who's continuing language in college. And it's those experiences to actually speak languages in social settings that allow them to take what they learn in classrooms and really expand on their language skills. And so that's a real value and a real asset to our students. So as I mentioned, there's some data that's, I think, interesting just in terms of enrollment patterns. By far, Spanish is our most highly taken class, and this data includes students who are taking Spanish as 8th graders as well, including French as well, as I should say. So you can see that there's a pretty significant number of students that will take all the way through level 2. That is the graduation requirement, so 2 years of a language in the same language. But a number of students plan and continue to take years of language after that. So again, the numbers drop off in all content areas because students may choose to take other electives, but pretty significant numbers. And particularly that AP Spanish is a class that over 100 of our students, or AP exam, an AP class, over 100 of our students take. French, not quite as much, and this was actually something that I was surprised by as I was looking at this data, is if you do look at ASL, we have 400 students that take that. Now, again, we don't offer ASL in 8th grade, so some of those French students are also taking 8th grade French. But we do see a number of students that are interested, and so that begs the question, well, why aren't we having level 3 opportunities? And so I did do some checking on just certification and the number of teachers we have, and it really is, ASL is of the world languages that we offer, the hardest subject to find teachers for. The other issue is that we do have, for example, some of our schools were able to get up to a class worth of students to sign up for that 3rd year. So for example, at one of our high schools, I think there were 30 students that expressed interest in the level 3 ASL class. However, the ASL teacher that they were able to find was full with the level 1 and 2 classes. And when they were able to try to combine with another high school to offer an additional position, the teacher they offered it to just wasn't interested. So again, you get to, okay, we have the position, we have the students, we offer the position to someone, and they want to take a full-time job. So finding full-time positions, even sharing between schools, is a challenge. Not to say that we don't have that challenge in other areas, but it's exacerbated by the lack of candidates to teach ASL. Oftentimes, too, there will be some folks who have the ability to teach multiple languages, and that doesn't always apply to ASL. So mostly it seems at this point it's a function of finding quality teachers. Remember, they have to have a certificate to teach world language. And then we also offer ASL as a CTE, so there's a CTE certification process as well. So it's not, we can just bring in a volunteer to teach ASL and have students receive high school credit for it. It needs to be a certificated teacher. And if we want to have that dual credit option, it needs to be a CTE certificated teacher. So both of those contribute to teaching readiness or teacher readiness. We do, as I mentioned, though, typically have students that are interested in those third-year courses, and so when we can offer them, we do. One of the things we've done, even with our French and Japanese classes, is when we can combine level 3 and 4 classes for students to get enough students to draw a class. So if we have a teacher, strategies like that can help us to make sure we can offer it, even when enrollment's a little bit lower. So I mentioned our world language high school credit requirements. Really driving that is that language is a 2-credit requirement, so 2 years of language in the same language. However, it's important to note that students can waive one of those or take a different option based on their personalized pathway requirement. Now, we need to make sure that students know that many colleges require 2 years of language in the same language, and so we need to make sure students are aware of that, but some students can choose to bypass that second world language option, and many students take more. The last couple things I wanted to talk about tonight, we have, as I mentioned, some alternatives for students. I mentioned the career plan, but students can also earn world language credit by taking a competency or proficiency assessment. We have started really kind of ramping this up over the past few years. And so students may earn up to 4 credits based on how they do on this proficiency assessment. We offer 4 testing sessions. And Tim Krieger and his department really do an outstanding job of doing outreach, going into classes, working with EL teachers. There are pretty much proficiency assessments for just about every language spoken in our district, and just about every language in our district that's represented takes some of those proficiency assessments. And I'll share some data on that now. So we have, as of 2017-18, almost 300 students that took the World Language Competency Assessment and earned World Language credit for that. And if we look at that by language, really interesting. So what we have is these are just the top languages that students took the competency credit in. As I mentioned, students are taking competency credits in just about every language that is spoken in our district, but these are the highest rates. And the number in parentheses is the ranking for the high school level of that language in our district. So for example, Spanish is at the high school level, the most spoken language by students at home. And so as you can see, our top languages are represented by the numbers of students taking proficiency assessments. The 2 that aren't up there in the top 10, I believe, are Tagalog, which is an Indian, one of the 22 recognized Indian languages. And I believe the other one is, no, we have Hindi up there as well. So, Vietnamese was the other one. And so I actually did check with Tim, and it was probably more a function of the students who were at the age or the time when they might have taken that, did take it. So it was 1 or 2 students at the high school level. And so they're just not reflected in these numbers because these reflect the number of students over time. So these are the top languages. But students are taking languages, taking competency credit in the languages that they speak, which is very promising. So to wrap up tonight, just some other data that we can look at, for example, at advanced placement for the courses that we do offer, as well as the fact that we allow students to take AP exams even if we don't offer the course, because some of our students are proficient in a language. So you can see some of our passage rates over time. The other thing to notice, though, is, and we shared this, I think, at a recent meeting, we have a really wonderful AP program across the board, not only in world language, so large numbers of students who take advanced placement tests and high passage rates. And those 2 don't always go together. Many districts really make concerted efforts to get high high numbers of students taking exams, but we also want to make sure they're doing well when they're taking them, and so we see that combination. So some really promising data, more students taking exams, particularly in Spanish, and the passage rates are remaining relatively high. And so to wrap up, I'm just kind of looking at those rates over time. Some pretty significant rates of passage. Again, when you're comparing to ourselves, you can see some fluctuation, but these are typically higher than state and national averages for AP exams in these areas. Oh, the last thing, so the seal of biliteracy, which is something we've been working on for the past few years. So as you know, students can earn recognition on their diploma for doing one of three things. They can earn an AP test score in a world language of 3 or higher, take an international baccalaureate test in a language and earn a 4 or higher on that, or achieve 4 credits through a language competency test. And so we have been working to make sure that schools are aware of this, and as you saw, our numbers of students earning competency credit has increased, and so that's resulted in a significant number of students who now are earning the seal of biliteracy. For 2018, that was 202 students who have that on their diploma. And so that's something where I think, again, we're seeing some real promise in terms of efforts that are being made by our assessment department in our schools. And so that is the World Language Report for the evening.
Thank you. So I will open it up to question. Director.
I just have a quick question. You don't have to pull it up, but slide 21 shows Chinese Mandarin.
Mm-hmm.
Is Mandarin the only language?
No,
Chinese
and I knew
language?
you would be, I knew somebody would ask. So we have, I'm just going through the number of students. So there's Mandarin, there is, gosh, what was the other one? Cantonese was the other one that's offered. And then we have students that identify as Mandarin or unspecified. And so those are actually in the top 10 of the languages spoken in our district.
Interesting, thank you.
It's not necessarily specific to language, actually, but on slide 18, when you mentioned that you can have, of the 2 world language requirements, you can substitute 1 off of your personal plan.
Yes.
And the same is true, for example, on algebra, that you can substitute in something else that is the algebra equivalent. I'm not sure I've ever seen numbers about how many kids do that.
Oh.
And I'd like to know sometime. So.
Yeah, we can find that.
Thanks.
Okay. Could we go back to your slide on middle schools?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Whoops. There we are. The students may receive high school credits for these courses, Spanish, French, Japanese, and not Latin. Why?
That's a good question. I believe I'm trying to remember if it was one they can receive credit for it. Okay.
Okay, it's just a slide problem then?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. That's one
And
of the
I think the question is,
high
we
school
need to
through
find out how
college.
many, because I think it's a question of, do they have the option of taking it as a freshman in high school?
Yeah, it's the getting 2 of the same is the challenge.
I think
for
that's
that.
the issue.
Right.
So students may not be choosing to use that for high school credit because there's not a second year high school credit option. Yeah, Matt, do you want to?
We had, in my district, we had Latin through senior year in public school.
There's a little bit more to the story. The teacher who teaches that teaches during the summer and provides summer opportunities for students to go beyond Latin 1 to Latin 2 and 3 and are receiving credit that way.
So I just have a few questions. The piece is as thinking about opportunity, and so looking through some of these. So there's a few questions. And one of those is, I know we start in the middle school at 8th grade. I know the international school, I believe, starts at, ICS is at 6th grade. They start Spanish. Is there any reason why we've chosen not to start earlier with the language instruction within our middle schools?
And Matt may correct me on this. My sense is it's partly a function of number of teachers and hiring teachers, elective offerings in the school, master schedule. Is that, Matt, would you say?
This is because I'm looking at our graduation policy closely lately. you need to be enrolled in a course that would be at the same level as would be provided at the high school level. So you could either be enrolled with high school students, or you would be having the same content as a high school level course. So it would be a course that would be taught at the 9th grade or above. That's one of the reasons why a 6th or 7th grade student taking the course wouldn't receive that credit. It'd be an exploration year.
But my understanding is there are schools that do, and there's a minimum we could at least be starting exploration of languages at a younger age. And knowing if it's 600 hours to get to Spanish proficiency, the earlier we can introduce it. And I say this partially because even I was introduced to it when I was in elementary school. And that just the exposure in and of itself is a value in which to build that. And I would bet, knowing what beginning Spanish is working with in that, you probably will have 6th graders or 7th graders who have capacity to do that. Knowing at the college level, they cover a year and a quarter. And so I would challenge us to think, what can we do at that middle school level? And whereas a dual language immersion hits it, it's a very small number that we actually succeed at getting to, and it will take time from teachers, but capacity to offer this more often, even at the elementary level, considering it. And then that also builds teachers' capacities in which to be able to do a dual language immersion. So I actually see two components. So that's one piece I guess I would think too from an opportunity side. I think we could look at a piece to the world language component.
I'm guessing because of the opportunity piece, it's seen just more as an exploratory traditionally in a middle school schedule. And I think even looking at proficiency in a second language is newer in terms of full systems of school districts. And so as we bring our dual language programs along in elementary and see what models actually work, I think that's something we can look at expanding. There are also multiple ways of offering some of those experiences a little earlier in the middle level if we would choose to add some online opportunities or some blended programs, even as we kind of bridge that and expand. And then we hope that we continue to have teachers being produced while we need them. So I think it's traditionally that format.
That'd be great, because this is a very key 21st century skill, the whole just multilingual, multicultural. We're a very diverse society. The more we can communicate effectively amongst ourselves, the better it will be. I didn't get to learn my second language till I was actually an adult, since your accent is not near as good as it should be at that point. The other question is opportunity, and I look at this, Japanese is at Redmond Middle, but I don't see it at any other middle schools.
Similarly, again, it's a function of finding teachers to teach the courses and student interest. And so that's that combination of the two. They have both at Redmond Middle School. They have a teacher and high interest. Though, if you build it, they will come as well. And so that's something to think about. But again, that's an area that's harder to find teachers to teach Japanese, Chinese, and ESL.
And the last one, and you already did touch on it, and that was the ASL. I'm thinking of the students who came and spoke to us about trying to do ASL 3 and knowing that some colleges, if you don't have 3 years of one language, you then have to take a language at college, which then has another impact upon students. Have we looked at community colleges as a possibility of partnering? If they provide an ASL and being able to utilize that component, I don't know. I was just trying to, is there another way we could get to that ASL 3 if it's not directly us, but through a partnering of who's out there?
I think that Bellevue College has a program, and I know that Highline has one because JT took ASL last quarter, and it basically becomes a full immersion class because the teacher is deaf. And you walk in the room, it's an interesting experience to have a college classroom that's totally silent. It's amazing. And how quickly those students caught on was just fantastic.
We'll continue to look. Yeah. I think you always have to look at what are our requirements, how do we make sure they get at least 2 years, and then how do we scale up from there? We've certainly seen that there's interest, so I think we'll keep trying to make that happen.
That'd be great. Director Sage?
Just one last thing. You had mentioned that sometimes if there's a language, but there's not enough kids to create one full class, maybe third-year Spanish and fourth-year Spanish kids would be together. What is the state law surrounding something like that? What if you had a certified ASL teacher in the room, but you also had a community member you hired as an instructional assistant who happens to speak ASL. Is that, because you'd still be able to have all of the practice, the teacher would be dictating the curriculum, you could work together. I'm just wondering.
I think it's just the teacher in the classroom. So if that teacher has a full day of 5 periods, bringing someone else in, they'd need to be in that classroom with them, and they couldn't be in the 2 classrooms at the same time or have the schedule. They actually even looked to see for this last particular case whether the teacher could do what we call a super contract or go beyond their 1.0, and she just wasn't interested. So
I hear it's very exhausting.
Yeah.
Like you can't do it for very long without needing a break, so thanks.
Any other questions? With that, I want to thank you for all your efforts in putting these together. The dual language immersion, I know, has been a lot of work for all our staff in doing it, but it's exciting that it's in place, and appreciate the analysis and everything that went around that to really think of how it even improves along the way. So excellent work by everybody with that, and with the additions of the world languages and continuing. So just want to thank you for all that work that came forward too. And with that, we will now move to the superintendent report.
Yeah, I just have a few brief comments. We had our first community engagement forum this week, and I was so impressed with the turnout. We had over 100 people there with a blended community voice, really, of parents and community members, staff, and students. And I think one of the most delightful parts for all of our groups were the student voices that they heard. And I'm always reminded of the value of those blended conversations, just the ideas that are generated in one night. It will be fun to see how things kind of emerge into themes, which then ultimately will be presented to the board with our findings and recommendations to guide our strategic plan work. But I think it also reinforces that the ongoing opportunities like those are exciting, and to think about ways we can dig in even deeper to different topics that we think we want to have extended conversations over the course of the next few years. So our appreciation to the people who are helping with that. And the next meeting is January 24th at Redmond Middle, and we look forward to seeing what emerges from the process.
Thank you. So our next step is the legislative update, and I don't know if Director LaLiberty, you have anything you'd like to report?
I do. So we have, over the last month, the district has met with a fair number, the majority of our local elected legislators, as well as Senator Wellman, who is the chair of the Education Committee. They were positive meetings. Our legislatures understand our positions, our priorities, as well as our concerns. They've also connected with staff. I think that, at least I believe, every single one of them now has your phone number, cell phone number, Dr. Stavum. Just about. So we will be well connected during the legislative session, which started today. The 105-day session started today. This is the first time in a long time that one party has controlled both houses, both houses of the legislature, as well as the executive branch. So there could be a lot moving relatively quickly that has not moved in the last several sessions. A few of our priorities have been made priorities of both OSPI and the governor. The changing the school construction assistance program funding mechanism is something that we have made a priority, and it's something that's been discussed. In addition, there was a joint legislative task force that was authorized last year that just submitted a report in mid-December, and it was a bipartisan group of legislators, and it has actually had changing that construction formula as one of its top priorities. Another one of our priorities, which is changing the bond funding mechanism from this 3/5 that it currently is 60% to a simple majority. That was also made one of the priorities of the legislative task force. So it's possible that there could be some traction for that. It's a constitutional amendment, so it would require 2/3 of both houses to pass it. So it's a pretty heavy lift, but it sounds like there could be some traction this year. So I will do my best to keep everyone, will not do my best. I will keep everyone updated on what is occurring during this session. Thank you, Chris. And more to come.
Any questions for Director La Liberty? Okay, well, thank you very much. The other place that there's information, WASDA's website gives you an opportunity for the legislative update. So that will get put out every Friday. Usually she posts a good summary of that week in the bills on that Sunday. If you're interested in more details, then possibly Director La Liberty will be sharing at this meeting. That will provide a lot more as well.
And one more plug for that. I would encourage everyone, the weekly newsletter they send out is remarkably readable for something that's talking about legislation. So a plug for that.
Okay, well, thank you. And with that, is there any board follow-up?
Yes.
Director Liberty?
So we did our reorganization tonight. We have talked, the board has, I believe at one work session before, thrown around the idea of changing the timing that we do, the cycle, thank you, for when we do our reorg. Given that we weren't able to really have a conversation before tonight about that, I didn't think it made sense to raise that tonight. But I think I would like to have that go on a work plan, perhaps for an extended study session. We can just talk about it for a little bit, whether it makes sense to switch it to match the school year rather than the calendar year. Yeah. So.
Okay, that is part of our policies. That's part of our governance policy. So we can look at those and part of that revision and have that discussion at that. That work? And that could be possible at the February 2nd. We'll discuss it to
That's our
figure out where it
Saturday-
fits.
Saturday
That's the
morning.
Saturday one.
Excellent.
Okay. I'll work with Dr. Staven and sort of figure out where we can fit that in. Everybody in agreement? Okay. Any other follow-up? That was also a future agenda item, so we'll just tack that on there. Any future agenda items? Any debrief? Any board member comments? Director Sage.
I would just like to say that this is the best gift that you can give anybody who loves education, is the opportunity to turn around and gift it to a school. So I am extremely impressed that we now have the opportunity to spread the joy of reading. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. That was very thoughtful. The other thing I would just like to sort of give a heads up on, I had the opportunity to attend an Eastside Pathways meeting. That's the collective impact model that we're in partnership with Bellevue School District and Lake Washington School District, as well as a variety of other community and government and business partners. This was about a local promotora program to work with. They have a Best Starts for Kids grant, and so these are bilingual promotoras, Spanish and English, who will be working, doing outreach with families of 0 to 5-year-old to really start working with some of that early education piece. So this was just an opportunity to gain information from things, and then we'll be looking at how it rolls out within the Bellevue School District in Lake Washington, much from a community perspective. So it was great. They had about 25 people there. It was run all bilingual, Spanish, English, and these are some dynamic people really interested in really supporting our families and communities. So it was a very exciting time. So be aware to hear more of that. So this is some of that collective impact work that's going on that we're a part of. And that would be it. Any other comments? Okay, with that, our schedule coming up, we have a special board meeting on January 30th, Wednesday, and this is the touring of Eastlake High School to look at the co-teaching model. On Saturday, February 2nd, that will be our extended study session from the morning, starting at 8:30. Monday, February 11th, we have a 5 p.m. study session on special education preschool. And that is it for the upcoming agenda. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director La Liberty and seconded by Director Carlson that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.